Chapter 26 of Cradock Nowell, A Tale of the New Forest, Volume 1, by Richard Doddridge Blackmore. This recording is in the public domain. Recording by Lynn Thompson. Chapter 26. At this melancholy time John Rosedew had quite enough to do without any burden of fresh anxieties about his own pet Amy. Nevertheless, that burden was added, not by Dr. Hutton's vague questions, although they helped to impose it, but by the father's own observation of his darling's strange condition. Can it be, he asked himself, and often longed to ask her, as he saw only lilies where roses had been, and little hands trembling at breakfast–time, can it be that this child of mine loved the poor boy Clayton, and is wasting away in sorrow for him? Is that the reason why she will not meet Cradock, nor Cradock meet her, and she trembles at his name? And then that book which Aunt Doxy made her throw on the kitchen fire. Very cruel I now see it was of my very good sister Eudoxia, though at first I did not think so. That book I know was poor Clayton's, for I have seen it in his hand. Well, if it truly is so, there is nothing to be done, except to be unusually kind to her, and trust to time for the cure, and give her plenty of black–currant jam. These ideas he imparted to the good Aunt Doxy, who delivered some apophthegms which John did not want to listen to, but undertook, whatever should happen, to be down upon Amy sharply. She knew all about her tonsils, and her uvula, and all that stuff, and she did not want John's advice, though she had never had a family, and thank God heartily for it. On Monday, when the funeral came to Nowelhurst churchyard, John Rosedew felt his heart give way, and could not undertake it. At the risk of deeply offending Sir Cradock, whose nerves that day were of iron, he passed the surplice to his curate, Mr. Pell, of Rushford, and begged him with a sad, slow smile to do the duty for him. Sir Cradock Nowell frowned and coloured, and then bowed low with an icy look, when he saw the change which had been made, and John Rosedew fall in as a mourner. People said that from that day the old friendship was dissevered. John, for his part, could not keep his eyes from the nook of the churchyard, where among the yew–trees stood, in the bitterness of anguish, he who had not asked, nor been asked, to attend as mourner. Cradock bowed his head and wept, for now his tears came freely, and prayed the one Almighty Father, who alone has mercy, not to take his misery from him, but to take him from it. When the mould was cast upon the coffin, Black Weena came between people's legs, gave a cry, and jumped in after it, thinking to retrieve her master, like a stick from the water. She made such a mournful noise in the grave, and whimpered, and put her head down, and wondered why no one said, "Weena, dear," that all the schoolgirls burst out sobbing, having had apples from Clayton lately, and Octavius Pell, the great cricketer, wanted something soft for his throat. That evening, when all was over, and the grave heaped snugly up, and it was time to think of other things, and begin to wonder at sorrow, John Rosedew went to Sir Cradock Nowell, not only as a fellow–mourner and a friend of ancient days, but as a minister of Christ. It had cost John many struggles, and, what with his sense of worldly favours, school–day friendship, delicacy, he could scarce tell what to make of it, till he just went down on his knees and prayed, and the learned man learned his duty. Sir Cradock turned his head away, as if he did not want him. John held out his hand, and said nothing. "Mr. Rosedew, I am surprised to see you." "And yet, John, this is kind of you." John hoped that he only said Mr. Rosedew because the footman was lingering, and he tried not to feel the difference. "Cradock, you know what I am, as well as I know what you are. 50 years, my dear fellow, 50 years of friendship." "Yes, John, I remember when I was 12 years old, and you fought Sam Cockings for me. And, Cradock, I thrashed him fairly. You know I thrashed him fairly. They said I got his head under the form, but you know it was all a lie. How I do hate lies! I believe it began that day. If so, the dislike is subjective. Perhaps I ought to reconsider it. John, I know nothing in your life which you ought to reconsider, except what you are doing now." Sir Cradock Nowell began the combat, because he felt that it must be waged, and perhaps he knew in that beginning that he had the weaker cause. "Cradock, I am doing nothing which is not my simple duty. When I see those I love in the deepest distress, can I help siding with them? Upon that principle, or want of it, you might espouse as a duty the cause of any murderer." The old man shuddered, and his voice shook as he whispered that last word. As yet he had not worked himself up, nor been worked up by others, to the black belief which made the living lost beyond the dead. "I am sure I don't know what I might do," said John Rosedew, simply; "but what I am doing now is right, and in your heart you know it. Come, Cradock, as an old man now, and one whom God has visited, forgive your poor, your noble son, who never will forgive himself." But for one word in that speech, John Rosedew would perhaps have won his cause, and reconciled son and father. My noble son, indeed, John! A very noble thing he has done. Shall I never hear the last of his nobility? And who ever called my Clayton noble? You have been unfair throughout, John Rosedew, most unfair, and blind to the merits of my more loving, more simple–hearted, more truly noble boy, I tell you." Mr. Rosedew, at such a time, could not of course contest the point, could not tell the bereaved old man that it was he himself who had been unfair. "And when," asked Sir Cradock, getting warmer, "when did you know my poor boy Violet stick up for his political opinions of his own at the age of 20, want to drain tenants' cottages, and pretend to be better and wiser than his father?" "And when have you known Cradock do, at any rate, the latter?" "Ever since he got that scholarship, that Scotland thing, at Oxford." Sir Cradock knew the name well enough, as every Oxford man does. "He has been perfectly insufferable. Such arrogance, such conceit, such airs! And he only got it by a trick. Poor Viley ought to have had it." John Rosedew tried to control himself, but the gross untruth and injustice of that last accusation were a little too much for him. "Perhaps, Sir Cradock Nowell, you will allow that I am a competent judge of the relative powers of the two boys, who knew all they did know from me, and from no one else." "Of course I know you are a competent judge, only blinded by partiality." John allowed even that to go by. "Without any question of preference, simply as a lover of literature, I say that Clayton had no chance with him in a Greek examination. In Latin he would have run him close. You know I always said so, even before they went to college. I was surprised at the time that they mentioned Clayton even as a second to him." "And grieved, I dare say, deeply grieved, if the truth were told." "It is below me to repel mean little accusations." "Come, John Rosedew," said Sir Cradock, magnanimously and liberally, "I can forgive you for being quarrelsome, even at such a time as this. It always was so, and I suppose it always will be. To–day I am not fit for much, though perhaps you do not know it. Thinking so little of my dead boy, you are surprised that I should grieve for him." "I should be surprised indeed if you did not. God knows even I have grieved deeply, as for a son of my own. Shake hands, John. You are a good fellow, the best fellow in the world. Forgive me for being petulant. You don't know how my heart aches." After that it was impossible to return for the moment to Cradock Nowell. But the next day John renewed the subject, and at length obtained a request from the father that his son should come to him. By this time Cradock hardly knew when he was doing anything, and when he was doing nothing. He seemed to have no regard for any one, no concern about anything, least of all for himself. Even his love for Amy Rosedew had a pall thrown over it, and lay upon the trestles. The only thing he cared at all for was his father's forgiveness. Let him get that, and then go away and be seen no more among them. He could not think, or feel surprise, or fear, or hope for anything. He could only tell himself all day long that if God were kind he would kill him. A young life wrecked, so utterly wrecked, and through no fault of his own, unless, as some begin to dream, we may not slay for luxury, unless we have but a limited right to destroy our father's property. Sir Cradock, it has been stated, cared a great deal more for his children than he did for his ancestors. He had not been wondering, through his sorrow, what the world would say of him, what it would think of the Nowells. He had a little too much self–respect to care a fig for fool's tongue. Now he sat in his carved oak–chair, expecting his only son, and he tried to sit upright. But the flatness of his back was gone, never to return, and the shoulder–blade showed through his coat, like a spoon left under the tablecloth. Still he appeared a stately man, not one easily bowed by fortune, or at least not apt to acknowledge it. Young Cradock entered his father's study, with a flush on his cheeks, which had been so pale, and his mind made up for endurance, but his wits going round like a swirl of leaves. He could not tell what he might say or do. He began to believe that he had shot his father, and to wonder whether it hurt him much. Trying in vain to master his thoughts, he stood with his quivering hands clasped hard, and his chin upon his breast. So perhaps Adrastus stood, Adrastus son of Gordias, before the childless Croesus, and the simple words are these. After this there came the Lydians carrying the corpse, and behind it followed the slayer, and standing there before the corpse, he gave himself over to Croesus, stretching forth his hands, commanding to slay him upon the corpse, telling both his own former stress, and how upon the top of that he had destroyed his cleanser, nor was his life now livable. Croesus, having heard these things, though being in so great a trouble of the hearth, has compassion on Adrastus, and says to him, "But Adrastus, son of Gordias, son of Midas, this man, I say, who had been the slayer of his womb–brother, and slayer of him that cleansed him, when there was around the grave a quietude from men, feeling that he was of all men whom he had ever seen the most weighed down with trouble, kills himself dead upon the tomb." But the father now was not like Croesus, the generous–hearted Lydian, although the man who stood before him was not a runagate from Phrygia, but the son of his own loins. The father did not look at him, but kept his eyes fixed on the window, as though he knew not any were near him. Then the son could wait no more, but spoke in a hollow, trembling voice. "Father, I am come as you ordered." "Yes, I will not keep you long. Perhaps you want to go out?" Shooting, he was about to say, but could not be quite so cruel. "I only wish to settle matters, that we may meet no more." "Oh, father, my own father, for God's sake, if there be a God, don't speak to me like that." "Sir, I shall take it as a proof that you are still a gentleman, which at least you used to be, if you will henceforth address me as Sir Cradock Nowell, a title which soon will be your own." "Father, look me in the face, and ask me. Then I will." Sir Cradock Nowell still looked forth the heavily–tinted window. His son, his only, his grief–worn son, was kneeling at his side, unable to weep, too proud to sob, with the sense of deep wrong rising. If the father once had looked at him, nature must have conquered. "Mr. Nowell, I have only admitted you that we might treat of business. Allow me to forget the face of a fratricide, perhaps murderer." Cradock Nowell fell back heavily, for he had risen from his knees. The crown of his head crashed the glass of a picture. His blood showered down his pale face. He never even put his hand up, to feel what was the matter. He said nothing, not a syllable, but stood there, and let the room go round. How his mother must have wept, if she was looking down from heaven! The old man, having all the while a crude, dim sense of outrunning his heart, gave the youth time to recover himself, if it were a thing worth recovering. "Now, as to our arrangements, the subject I wish to speak about. I only require your consent to the terms I propose, until, in the natural course of events, you succeed to the family property." "What family property, sir?" Cradock's head was dizzy still, and bleeding had done him good. "Why, of course, the Nowelhurst property. All these entailed estates, to which you are now sole heir." "I will never touch 1 shilling, nor step upon 1 acre of it." "Under your mother's—that is to say, under my marriage–settlement," continued Sir Cradock, in the same tone, as if his son were only bantering, "you are at once entitled to the sum of £50,000, invested in 3 per cent. Consols, which would have been—which was meant for younger children. This sum the trustees will be prepared—" "Do you think I will touch it? Am I a thief as well as a murderer?" "I shall also make arrangements for securing to you, until my death, an income of £5,000 per annum. This you can draw for quarterly, and the cheques will be countersigned by my steward, Mr. Garnet." "Of course, lest I should forge. Once for all, hear me, Sir Cradock Nowell. So help me the God who has now forsaken me, who has turned my life to death, and made my own father curse me. Every word of yours is a curse, I say. So help me that God, if there be one to help, as well as to smite a man, till you crave my pardon upon your knees, as I have craved yours this day, I will never take 1 yard of your land. I will never call myself Nowell, or own you again as my father. God knows I am very unlucky and little, but you have shown yourself less, and some day you will know it." In the full strength of his righteous pride, he walked for the first time like a man, since he leaped that deadly hedge. From that moment a change came over him. There was nothing to add to his happiness, but something to rouse his manhood. The sense of justice, the sense of honour, that flower and crown of justice, forbade him henceforth to sue, and be shy, and bemoan himself under hedges. From that day forth he was a man visited of God, and humbled, but facing ever his fellow–men, and not ashamed of affliction. Chapter 26. Chapter 27 of Cradock Nowell, A Tale of the New Forest, Volume 1, by Richard Doddridge Blackmore. This recording is in the public domain. Chapter 27. With an even step, and no frown on his forehead, nor glimpse of a tear in his eyes, young Cradock walked to his own little room, his nest, as he used to call it, where pipes, and books, and Oxford prints, no ballet–girls, however, and not so very many hunters, and whips, and foils, and boxing–gloves, cum multis aliis quae nunc describere longum est, et qui non dicta long ago, were handled more often than dusted. All these things, except one pet little pipe, which he was now come to look for, and which Viley had given him a year ago, when they swapped pipes on their birthday, like Diomed and the brave Lycian. All the rest were things of a bygone age, to be thought of no more for the present, but dreamed of, perhaps, on a Christmas Eve, when the air is full of luxury. Caring but little for any of them, although he had loved them well, until they seemed to injure him, Cradock proceeded with great equanimity to do a very foolish thing, which augured badly for the success of a young man just preparing to start for himself in the world. He poured the entire contents of his purse into a little cedar tray, then packed all the money in paper rolls, with a neatness which rather astonished him, and sealed each roll with his amethyst ring. Then he put them into a little box of some rare and beautiful palm–wood, which had been his mother's, laid his cheque–book beside them, for he had been allowed a banking account long before he was of age, and placed upon that his gold watch and chain, and trinkets, the amethyst ring itself, his diamond studs, and other jewellery, even a locket, which had contained 2 little sheaves of hair bound together with golden thread, but from which he first removed, and packed in silver paper, the fair hair of his mother. This last, with the pipe which Clayton had given him, and the empty purse made by Amy's fingers, were all he meant to carry away, besides the clothes he wore. After locking the box, he rang the bell, and begged the man who answered it to send old Hogstaff to him. That faithful servant, from whom he had learned so many lessons of infancy, came tottering along the passage, with his old eyes dull and heavy. For Job had gloried in those 2 brothers, and loved them both as the children of his elder days. And now one of them was gone for ever, in the height of his youth and beauty, and a whisper was in the household that the other would not stay. Of him, whom Job had always looked upon as his future master, for he meant to outlive the present Sir Cradock, as he had done the one before him, he had just been scoring upon his fingers all the things he had taught him: to whistle spankadillo, while he drummed it with his knuckles; to come to the pantry door, and respond to the "Who's there?" a grenadier, shouldering a broomstick; to play on the Jew's harp with variations, an old friend, and a bottle to give him; and then to uncork the fictitious bottle with the pop of his forefinger out of his mouth, and to decant it carefully with a part of his gurgling cheeks. After all that, how could he believe Master Crad could ever forsake him? Now Mr. Hogstaff's legs were getting like the ripe pods of a scarlet runner, although he did not run much. Here they stuck in, and there they stuck out, abnormally in either case. His body began to come forward, as if warped at the small of the back, and his honest face, though he drank but his duty, was Septembered with many a vintage. And yet, with the keenness of love and custom, he saw at once what the matter was, as he looked up at the young master. "Oh, Master Crad, dear Master Crad, whatever are you going to do? Don't, for good now, don't, I beg on you. Hearken now, do 'ee hearken to an old man for a minute?" And he caught him by both arms to stop him, with his tremulous wrinkled hands. "Oh, Hoggy, dear kind Hoggy, you are about the only one left to care about me now." "No, don't you say that, Master Crad. Don't you say that, whatever you do. Whoever tell you that, tell a lie, sir. It was only last night Mrs. Toaster and cook, and Mrs. O'Gaghan, the Irishwoman, was round the fire boiling. And they cried a deal more than they boiled. I do assure you they did, sir. And Mr. Stote, he come in with some rabbits, and he went on like mad. And the maids, so sorry every one of them, they can't be content with their mourning, sir. I do assure you they can't. Oh, don't 'ee do no harm to yourself, don't 'ee, Mr. Cradock, sir?" "No, Hoggy," said Cradock, taking his hands, "you need not fear that now of me. I have had very wicked thoughts, but God has helped me over them. Henceforth I am resolved to bear my trouble like a man. It is the part of a dog to run, when the hoot begins behind him. Now take this little box, and this key, and give them yourself to Sir Cradock Nowell. It is the last favour I shall ask of you. I am going away, my dear old friend. Don't keep me now, for I must go. Only give me your good wishes, and see that they mind poor Caldo. And whatever they say of me behind my back, you won't believe it, Job Hogstaff, will you?" Job Hogstaff had never been harder put to it in all his 70 years. Then, as he stood at the open door to see the last of his favourite, he thought of the tall, dark woman's words so many years ago. "A bonny pair ye have gat, but ye'll ha no luck o' them. Take the word of 60 year, ye'll never get no luck o' them." Cradock turned aside from his path to say good–bye to Caldo. It would only take just a minute, he thought, and of course he should never see him again. So he went to that snuggest and sweetest of kennels, and in front of it sat the king of dogs. The varieties of canine are as manifold and distinct as those of human nature; but the dog, be he saturnine or facetious, sociable or contemplative, mercurial or melancholic, is quite sure to be one thing, true and loyal ever. Can we, who are less than the dogs of the infinite, say as much of ourselves to him? Now Caldo, who has been implied, if not expressed before, was a setter of large philosophy and rare reflective power. I mean, of course, theoretical more than practical philosophy, as any dog would soon have discovered who tried to snatch a bone from him. Moreover, he had some originality, and a turn for satire. He would sit sometimes by the hour, nodding his head impressively, and blinking first one eye and then the other, watching and considering the doings of his fellow–dogs. How fashionably they yawned and stretched, in a mode they had learned from a pointer, who was proud of his teeth and vertebræ. How they hooked up their tails for a couple of joints, and then let them fall at a right angle, having noticed that fashion in ladies' bustles, when they came on a Sunday to talk to them. How they crawled on their stomachs to get a pat, as a provincial mayor does for knighthood. How they sniffed at each other's door, with an eye to the rotten bones under the straw, as we all smell about for the wealthy. How their courtesy to one another flowed from their own convenience. These, and 1,000 other dog–tricks, Caldo, dwelling apart, observed, but did not condemn, for he felt that they were his own. Now he hushed his bark of joy, and looked up wistfully at his master, for he knew by the expression of that face all things were not as they ought to be. Why had Wena snapped at him so, and avoided his society, though he had always been so good to her, and even thought of an alliance? Why did his master order him home that dull night in the covert, when he was sure he had done no harm? Above all, what meant that moving blackness he had seen through the trees only yesterday, when the other dogs, muffs as they were, expected a regular battue, and came out strong at their kennel doors, and barked for young Clayton to fetch them? So he looked up now in his master's face, and guessed that it meant a long farewell, perhaps a farewell for ever. He took a fond look into his eyes, and his own pupils told great volumes. Then he sat up, and begged for a minute or two, with a most beseeching glance, to share his master's fortunes, though he might have to steal his livelihood, and never get any shooting. Seeing that this could never be, he planted his forepaws on Cradock's breast, though he felt that it was a liberty, and nestled his nose right under his cheek, and wanted to keep him ever so long. Then he howled with a low, enduring despair, as the footfall he loved grew fainter. Looking back sadly now and then at the tranquil home of his childhood, whose wings and gables and depths of stone were grand in the autumn sunset, Cradock Nowell went his way toward the simple rectory. He would say good–bye there to Uncle John and kind Aunt Doxy. Miss Rosedew the younger, of course, would avoid him, as she had done ever since. But suddenly he could not resist the strange desire to see once more that fatal, miserable spot, the bidental of his destiny. So he struck into a side–path leading to the deep and bosky covert. The long shadows fell from the pale birch–stems, the hollies looked black in the sloping light, and the brown leaves fluttered down here and there, as the cold wind set the trees shivering. Only 6 days ago, only half an hour further into the dusk, he had slain his own twin brother. He crawled up the hedge through the very same gap, for he could not leap it now. His back ached with weakness, his heart with despair, as he stayed himself by the same hazel–branch which had struck his gun at the muzzle. Then he shivered as the trees did, and his hair, like the brown leaves, rustled, as he knelt and prayed that his brother's spirit might appear there and forgive him. Hoping and fearing to find it there, he sidled down into the dark wood, and with his heart knocking hard against his ribs, forced himself to go forward. All at once his heart stood still, and every nerve of his body went creeping, for he saw a tall white figure kneeling where his brother's blood was, kneeling, never moving, the hands together as in prayer, the face as wan as immortality, the black hair, if it were hair, falling straight as a pall drawn back from an alabaster coffin–head. The power of the entire form was not of earth nor heaven, but as of the intermediate state, when we know not we are dead yet. Cradock could not think nor breathe. The whole of his existence was frozen up in awe. It showed him in the after–time, when he could think about it, the ignorance, the insolence of dreaming that any human state is quit of human fear. While he gazed, in dread to move, not knowing his limbs would refuse him, with his whole life swallowed up in gazing at the world beyond the grave, the tall white figure threw its arms up into the darkening sky, rose, and vanished instantly. What do you think Cradock Nowell did? We all know what he ought to have done. He ought to have walked up calmly, with measured yet rapid footsteps, and his eyes and wits well about him, and investigated everything. Instead of that, he cut and ran, as hard as he could go. And I know I should have done the same thing, and I believe more than half of you would, unless you were too much frightened. He would never turn back upon living man, but our knowledge of Hades is limited. We pray for angels around our bed. If they came, we should have nightmare. Cradock, going at a desperate pace, with a handsome pair of legs, which had recovered their activity, kicked up something hard and bright from a little dollop of leaves, caught it in his hand like a tennis–ball, and leaped the hedge uno impetu. Away he went, without stopping to think, through the splashy sides of the spire–bed, almost as fast, and quite as much frightened, as Rufus Hutton's mare. When he got well out into the chase, he turned, and began to laugh at himself. But a great white owl flapped over a furze–bush, and away went Cradock again. The light had gone out very suddenly, as it often does in October, and Cradock, whose wind was uncommonly good, felt it his duty to keep good hours at the rectory. So with the bright thing, whatever it was, poked anywhere into his pocket, he came up the drive at early tea–time, and got a glimpse through the window of Amy. "Couldn't have been Amy, at any rate," he said to himself, in extinction of some very vague ideas. "I defy her to come at the pace I have done. No, no, it must have been in answer to my desperate prayer." Amy was gone, though her cup was there, when Cradock entered the drawing–room. "Well," he thought, "how hard–hearted she is! But it cannot matter now, much; though I never believed she would be so." Being allowed by his kind entertainers to do exactly as he pleased, poor Cradock had led the life of a hermit more than that of a guest among them. He had taken what little food he required in the garret he had begged for, or carried it with him into the woods, where most of his time was spent. Of course all this was very distressing to the hospitable heart of Miss Doxy, but her brother John would have it so, for so he had promised Cradock. He could understand the reluctance of one who feels himself under a ban to meet his fellow–creatures hourly, and know that they all are thinking of him. So it came to pass that Miss Eudoxia, who now sat alone in the drawing–room, was surprised as well as pleased at the entrance of their refugee. As he hesitated a moment, in doubt of his reception, she ran up at once, took both his hands, and kissed him on the forehead. "Oh, Cradock, my dear boy, this is kind of you, most kind indeed, to come and tell me at once of your success. I need not ask, I know by your face, the first bit of colour I have seen in your poor cheeks this many a day." "That's because I have been running, Miss Rosedew." "Miss Rosedew, indeed! And now, Cradock, Aunt Eudoxia, if you please, or Aunt Doxy, with all my heart now." He used to call her so, to tease her, in the happy days gone by, and she loved to be teased by him, her pet and idol. "Dear Aunt Eudoxia, tell me truly, do you think—I can hardly ask you—" "Think what, Cradock? Oh, my poor Cradock! Oh, don't be like that." "Not that I did, I don't mean that; but that it was possible for me to have done it on purpose." "Done what on purpose, Cradock?" "Why, of course, that horrible, horrible thing." "On purpose, Cradock? My poor innocent! Only let me hear any one dream of it, and if I don't come down upon them—" An undignified sentence, that of Aunt Doxy's, as well as a most absurd one. How long has she been in the habit of hearing people dream? "Some one not only dreams it, some one actually believes that I did it so." "The low wretch! The despicable—— Who?" "My own father." I will not repeat what Miss Rosedew said, when she recovered from her gasp, because her language was stronger than becomes an elderly lady, and the sister of a clergyman, not to mention the Countess of Driddledrum and Dromore, who must have been wholly forgotten. "Then you don't think, Aunt Eudoxia, that Uncle John would believe it?" "What, my brother John? Surely you know better than that, my dear." "Nor perhaps not even cousin Amy?" "Amy, indeed! I do believe that child is perfectly mad. I can't make her out at all, she is so contradictory. She cries half the night, I am sure of that, and she does not care for her school, though she goes there, and her flowers she won't look at." Seeing that Cradock's countenance fell more and more at all this, Miss Rosedew, who had long suspected where his heart was dwelling, told him a thing to cheer him up, which she had declared she would never tell. "Darling Amy is, you know, a very odd girl indeed. Sometimes, when something happens very puzzling and perplexing, some great visitation of Providence, Amy becomes so dreadfully obstinate. I mean, she has such delightful faith that we are obliged to listen to her, and she is quite sure to be right in the end, though at the moment, perhaps, we laugh at her. And yet she is so shy. You can never get at her heart, except by forgetting what you are about. Well, we got at it somehow this afternoon, and you should have heard what she said. Her beautiful great eyes flashed upon us, like the rock that was struck, and gushed like it, before she ended. 'Can we dare to think,' she cried, 'that our God is asleep like Baal, that he knows not when he has chastened his children beyond what they can bear? I know that he, who is now so trampled and crushed of heaven, is not tried thus for nothing. He shall rise again more pure and large, and fresh from the hand of God, and do what lucky men rarely think of, the will of his Creator.' And when John and I looked at her, she fell away and cried terribly." Cradock was greatly astonished. It seemed so unlike young Amy to be carried away in that style. But her comfort and courage struck root in his heart, and her warm faith thawed his despair. Still he saw very little chance, at present, of doing anything but starving. "How wonderfully good you all are to me! But I can't talk about it, though I shall think of it as long as I live. I am going away to–night, Aunt Doxy, but I must first see Uncle John." Of course Miss Rosedew was very angry, and proved it to be quite impossible that Cradock should leave them so. But before long her good sense prevailed, and she saw that it was for the best. While he stayed there, he must either persist to shut himself up in solitude, or wander about in desert places, and never look with any comfort on the face of man. So she went with him to the door of the book–room, and left him with none but her brother. John Rosedew sat in his little room with only one candle to light him, and the fire gone out as usual. His books lay all around him, even his best–loved treasures, but his heart was not among them. The grief of the old, though not wild and passionate as a young man's anguish, is perhaps more pitiable, because more slow and hopeless. The young tree rings to the keen pruning–hook, the old tree groans to the grating saw, but one will blossom and bear again, while the other gapes with canker. None of his people had heard the rector quote any Greek or Latin for a length of time unprecedented. When a sweet and playful mind like his has taken to mope and be earnest, the effect is far more sad and touching than a stern man's melancholy. Ironworks out of blast are dreary, but the family hearth moss–grown is woeful. Uncle John leaped up very lightly from his brooding, rather than reading, and shook Cradock Nowell by the hand, as if he never would let him go, all the time looking into his face by the light of a composite candle. It was only to know how he had fared, and John read his face too truly. Then, as Cradock turned away, not wanting to make much of it, John came before him with sadness and love, and his blue eyes glistened softly. "My boy," was all he could say, or think, for a very long time. Then Cradock told him, without a tear, a sigh, or even a comment, but with his face as pale as could be, and his breath coming heavily, all that his father had said to him, and all that he meant to do through it. "And so, Uncle John," he concluded, rising to start immediately, "here I go to seek my fortune, such as it will and must be. Good–bye, my best and only friend. I am 10 times the man I was yesterday, and shall be grander still to–morrow." He tried to pop off like a lively cork, but John Rosedew would not have it. "Young man, don't be in a hurry. It strikes me that I want a pipe, and it also strikes me that you will smoke one with me." Cradock was taken aback by the novelty of the situation. He had never dreamed that Uncle John could, under any possible circumstances, ask him to smoke a pipe. He knew well enough that the rector smoked a sacrificial pipe to Morpheus, in a room of his own upstairs; only one, while chewing the cud of all he had read that day. But Mr. Rosedew had always discouraged, as elderly smokers do, any young aspirants to the mystic hierophancy. It is not a vow to be taken rashly, for the vow is irrevocable, except with men of no principle. And now he was to smoke there, he, a mere bubble–blowing boy, to smoke in the middle of deepest books, to fumigate a manuscript containing a lifeful of learning, which John could no more get on with; and, oh Miss Eudoxia, to make the hall smell, and the drawing–room. The oxymoron overcame him, and he took his pipe. John Rosedew had filled it judiciously, and quite as a matter of course. He filled his own in the self–same manner, with a digital skill worthy of an ancient fox trying on a foxglove. All the time John was shyly wondering at his own great force of character. "Now," said John Rosedew, still keeping it up, "I have a drop of very old Schiedam—Schnapps, I think, or something—of which I want your opinion. Crad, my boy, I want your opinion, before we import any more. I am no judge of that sort of thing. It is so long since I was at Oxford." Without more ado, he went somewhither, after lighting Cradock's yard of clay, which the young man burnt his fingers about, for he wouldn't let the old man do it, and came back like a bacchanal, with a square black–jack beneath his arm, and Jenny after him, wondering whether they had not prayed that morning enough against the devil. It was a good job Miss Amy was out of the way. The old cat was bewitched, that was certain, as well as her dear good master. Miss Doxy was happy in knowing not that she was called the old cat in the kitchen. End of chapter 27. Chapter 28 of Cradock Nowell, A Tale of the New Forest, Volume 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynn Thompson. Cradock Nowell, A Tale of the New Forest, Volume 1, by Richard Doddridge Blackmore. Chapter 28. "Now, Craddy, my dear, dear boy," said Uncle John, when things had been done with lemon and cold water, and all that wherein discussion so utterly beats description, "you know me too well to suppose that I wish to pass things lightly. I know well enough that you will look the hard world full in the face, and so should I do in your case. All I wish is that you should do it, not with spite, or bile, or narrowness, but broadly as a Christian." "It is hard to talk about that now," said Cradock, inhaling charity, and puffing away all acrimony. "Uncle John, I hope I may come to it as my better spirit returns to me." "I hope it indeed, and believe it, Crad. I don't see how it can be otherwise. With a young man of your breadth of mind, and solid faith to help you, an empty lad, who snaps up stuff because he thinks it fine, and garbles it into garbage, would become an utter infidel, under what you have suffered. With you, I believe it will be otherwise. I believe you will be enlarged and purified by sorrow, the night which makes the guiding star so much the clearer to us." John Rosedew was drinking no Schiedam, allow me to explain, though pretending rare enjoyment of it, and making Cradock drink a little, because his heart was down so. After they had talked a pipeful longer, not great weighty sentiments, but a deal of kindly stuff, the young fellow got up quietly, and said, "Now, Uncle John, I must go." "My boy, I can trust you anywhere, after what you have been telling me. Of human nature I know nothing, except"—for John thought he did know something—"from my own little experience. I find great thoughts in the Greek philosophers, but somehow they are too general, and too little genial. One thing I know, we far more often mistrust than trust unwisely. And now I can trust you, Cradock. In the main you will stand upright. Stop, my boy, you must have a scrip. I was saving it for your birthday." "You don't despise me, I hope," said Cradock. "You don't think me a coward for running away so? After what has happened to–day, I should go mad if I stopped here. Not that that would matter much, only that, if it were so, I should be sure to do it." John Rosedew had no need to ask what he meant by the last two words, for the hollow voice told him plainly. But for him it is likely enough that it would have been done ere this. At any rate, in the first horror, his hand alone had prevented it. The parson trembled at the idea, but thought best not to dwell upon it. "Reformidare mortem est animi pusillanimi", but reformidare vitam is 10 times worse, because impious. Therefore, in your case, my boy, it is utterly impossible, as well as ignoble, towards us who love you so. Remember that you will break at least 2 old hearts you owe some duty to, if you allow your own to be broken. And now for your viaticum. See how you have relieved me. While you liveth beneath Hymetian beams in the goods of Tyre and Cyprus, I, even I, your godfather, knew not what to give you. The thought has been vexing me for months. And now what a simple solution! You shall have it in the original dross, to pay the toll on the Appian road, at least the South–Western Railway. Figs to Athens, I thought it would be, or even as eels to Copaeus. And now Serves iturum Caesarem. I believe it is the 21st page of my manuscript, such as it is, upon the Sabellian elements." After searching in 3 or 4 drawers, for he was rather astray at the moment, though generally he could put his hand, even in the dark, upon any particular one of his 10,000 books, He came upon the Sabellian treaties, written on backs of letters, on posters, on puffing circulars, even on visiting cards, and cast-away tradesmen's tickets. And there, at the 21st page or deltis, lay a £50 Bank of England note, with some very tough roots arranged diamond-wise on the back, and arrows, and hyphens, and asterisks flying about thickly between them. These he copied off in a moment on a piece of old hat lining, and then triumphantly waved the banknote in the air. It was not often poor Uncle John got hold of so much money. Too bitterly knew Aunt Doxy how large was the mesh of his purse. While Cradock gazed with great admiration, John Rosedew, with his fingers upon his lips, and looking half ashamed of himself, went to a cupboard, whose doors half open gave a glimpse of countless sermons. From among them he drew a wide-mouthed bottle of leeches, and set it upon the table. Then he pulled out the stopper, unplugged it, and lo, from a hole in the cork fell out 2 sovereigns and a half-one. As this money rolled on the table, John could not help chuckling a little. "Ha! Good sister Eudoxia, have I overreached thee again? Double precaution there, you see, Crad. She has a just horror of my sermons, and she runs at the sight of a leech. Non misura acutem, to be sure, not a word about it, Crad. That asylum is inviolable. And sempitern, I hope. I shall put more there next week." Cradock took the money at once, with the deepest gratitude, but no great fuss about it, for he saw how bitterly that good man would feel it, if he were small enough to refuse. I shall not dwell upon their good–bye, as we have had enough valediction. Only Cradock promised to write from London, as soon as he could give an address there. Then, leaving sadness behind him, carried a deal of it with him. Only something must yet be recounted, which befell him in Nowelhurst, and this is the first act of it. While he was in his garret, packing a little bag of necessaries, forced upon him by Miss Doxy from John's wardrobe, and her own, almost indiscriminately, and while she was pulling and struggling up–stairs with John, and Jemima, and Jenny, for she would have made Cradock, if she could, carry the entire house with him, he, stowing some things in his pocket, felt what he had caught up so hastily while flying out of the wood. He examined it by candlelight, and became at once intent upon it. It had lain beneath a drift of dead leaves, backed by a scraggy branch, whence anything short of a grand skedaddle would never have dislodged it. And yet it was a great deal too pretty to be treated in that way. Cradock could not help admiring it, though he shuddered and felt some wild hopes vanish as he made out the meaning. It was a beautiful gold bracelet, light, and of first–rate workmanship, harmonious too with its purpose, and of elegant design. The lower half was a strong soft chain in the fabric of trichinopoly, which bends like the skin of a snake. The front and face showed a strong right arm, gauntleted, yet entirely dependent upon the hand of a lady. No bezelling, no jewel whatever, except that a glorious rose–shaped pearl hung, as in contest, between them. Cradock wondered for some little time what could be the meaning of it. Then he knew that it was Clayton's offering to the beloved Amy. No doubt could remain any longer, when he saw in the hollow of the back the proposed inscription pencilled: "Rosa debita," for the dead gold of the lady's palm; "Rosa dedita," for the burnished gold of the cavalier's high pressure. With ingenious love to help him, he made it out in a moment. A rose due, now a rose true. That was what it came to, if you took it in punster fashion. Just one of poor Viley's conceits. Cradock had no time to follow it out, for Miss Eudoxia then came in with a parcel as big as a feather–bed, of comforters, wrappers, and eatables. But after he had left the house, he began to think about it, in the little path across the green to the village churchyard. He concluded that Amy must have been in the wood that fatal evening. She must have come to meet Clayton there, and yet it was not like her. Facts, however, are facts, as sure as eggs are eggs. though our knowledge makes no great advance through either of those aphorisms. But a growing sense of injury, though he had no right to feel injured, however it might be, this sense had kept him from asking for Amy, or leaving the flirt a good–bye. He entered the quiet churchyard, with the moon rising over the tombstones, a mass of shadow cast by the great tower, and some epitaphs pushing well into the night, like the names which get poked into history. The wavering glance of the diffident moon, uncertain yet what the clouds meant, slipped along the buttressed walls, and tried to hold on at the angles. The damp corner, where the tower stood forth, and the south porch ran out to look at it, drew back like a ghost who was curtseying, and declining all further inquiry. Green slime was about, like the sludge of a river, and 100 sacred memories, growing weary and rheumatic, had stopped their ears with lichen. Cradock came in at the rickety swing–stile, and caring no shadow for ghost or ghostess, although he had run away so, took the straight course to the old black doorway, and on to the heart of the churchyard, for he must say good–bye to Clayton. All Nowelhurst still admired that path, but those who had paved and admired it first were sleeping on either side of it. The pavement now was overlapped, undertucked, and crannied, full of holes where lob–worms lived, and came out after a thunderstorm, and 3–cornered dips that looked glazed in wet weather, but scurfy and clammy in drought. And some of the flags stole away and gave under, as if they too wanted burial, while others jerked up, and asserted themselves as superior to some of the tombstones. There in the dark, no mortal with any respect for his grandfather, nor even a ghost with unbevilled souls, could go many steps without tripping. Who will be astonished, then, when I say that the lightest and loveliest foot that ever tripped in the New Forest, not only tripped but stumbled there? At the very corner where the sidewalk comes in, and the shade of the tower was deepest, smack from behind a hideous sarcophagus, fell into Cradock's arms the most beautiful thing ever seen. If he had not caught her, she must have cut the very sweetest face in the world into great holes like the pavement. Stunned for a moment, and then so abroad that she could not think, nor even speak nor think, I would have said, if Amy had been masculine, she lay in Cradock's trembling arms, and never wondered where she was. Cradock forgot all despair for the moment, and felt uncommonly lively. It was the sweetest piece of comfort sent to him yet from heaven. Afterwards he always thought that his luck turned from that moment. Perhaps it did, although most people would laugh who knew him afterwards. Presently Amy recovered, and was wroth with herself and everybody. Ruddier than a boursault rose, she fell back against the tombstone. "Oh, Amy," said Cradock, retiring, "I have known it long. Even you are turned against me." "I turned against you, Mr. Nowell? What right have you to say that of me?" "No right to say anything, Amy, and scarcely a right to think anything. Only I have felt it." "Then I wouldn't give much for your feelings. I beg your pardon, you know I can never express myself." "Of course I know that," said Cradock. "Oh, can't I, indeed?" said Amy. "I dare say you think so, Mr. Nowell. You have always thought so meanly of me. But if I can't express my meaning, I am sure my father can. Perhaps you think you know more than he does." "Amy," said Cradock, for all this was so unlike herself, that loving that self more than his own, he scarce knew what to do with it. "Amy, dear, I see what it is. I suspected it all along." "What, if you please, Mr. Nowell? I am not accustomed to be suspected. Suspected, indeed!" "Miss Rosedew, don't be angry with me. I know very well how good you are. It is the last time I shall ever see you, or I would not restore you this." The moon, being on her way towards the south–east, looked over the counter–like gravestone, and Cradock placed on the level surface the bracelet found in the wood. Amy knew it in a moment, and she burst out crying. "Oh, poor Clayton! How proud he was of it! Mr. Nowell, I never could have thought this of you. Never, never, never. Thought what of me, Amy? Darling Amy, what on earth have I done to offend you? Oh, nothing. I suppose it is nothing to remind me how cruel I have been to him. Oh, no, nothing at all. And all this from you." In a storm of sobs she fell upon Jeremy Wattle's tombstone, and Cradock put one arm around her, to prevent her being hurt. "Amy, you drive me wild. I have brought it to you only because it is yours, and because I am going away." "Cradock, it never was mine. I refused it months ago, and I believe he gave it—you know what he was, poor dear—I believe he transferred it, and something else—oh no, I can't express myself—just to somebody else. Oh, you darling, and who was that other? What a fool he must have been! Confound it, I never meant that." "I don't know, Cradock. Oh, please keep away. But I think it was Pearl Garnet. Oh, Cradock, dear Cradock, how dare you?" "No, I won't. Yes, I will, Crad, considering all your misery." And she put up her pure lips in the moonlight, for Cradock had got her in both arms by this time, and was listening to no reason. Her sweet lips, pledged once, pledged for ever. She put them up in her love and pity, and let him do what he liked with them. And the moon, attesting 1,000 seals hourly, never witnessed one more binding. After all, Cradock Nowell, so tried of heaven, so scourged with the bitterest rods of despair, your black web of life is interwoven now with one bright thread of gold. The purest, the sweetest, the loveliest girl that ever spun happiness out of sorrow, or smiled through the veil of affliction, the truest and dearest of all God's children, loving all things, hating none, pours into your heart for ever all that fount of love, freed henceforth from doubt and wonder, except at her own happiness, enfranchised of another world, enriched beyond commercial thoughts, ennobled beyond self. She blushed as she spoke, and grew pale as she thought, and who shall say which was more beautiful? Cradock could tell, perhaps, if any one can, but he only knew that he worshipped her. And to see the way she cried with joy, and how her young bosom panted, it was enough to warm old Jeremy Wattle, dead and buried nigh 80 years. Cradock, all abroad himself, full of her existence, tasting, feeling, thinking nothing, except of her deliciousness, drew his own love round to the light to photograph her for ever. Poor Clayton was dead, else Crad would have thought that he deserved to be so, for going away to Pearl Garnet. But then the grapes were sour. How he revelled in that reflection! And yet it was very wrong of him. Amy stood up in the moonlight, not ashamed to show herself. She felt that Cradock was poring upon her, to stereotype every inch of her, and yet she was not one atom afraid. She knew that no man ever depreciates his own property, except in the joke which is brag. It is a most wonderful thing, what girls know and what they won't know. But who cares now for reflections? Her thick hair had all fallen out of her hat, because she had been crying so. Her delicate form, still so light and girlish, leaned forward in trust of the future, and the long dark lashes she raised for her lover glistened with the deep light under them. Shame was nestling in her cheeks, the shame of growing womanhood, the down on the yet ungathered fruit of love. Then she crept in closer to him, to stop him from looking so much at her. "Darling Cradock, my own dear Cradock, don't you know me now? You see, I only love you so because you are so unlucky, and I am so dreadfully obstinate." "Of course I know all that, my pet, my beautiful inexpressible. And remember that I only love you so because you are such a darling." Then Amy told him how sorry she was for having been so fractious lately, and that she would never be so again, only it was all his fault, because she wanted to comfort him, and he would not come and let her. Here the softest gleam fluttered through her tears, like the mazarine blue among dewdrops. and that only for the veriest chance, and the saucer she had broken. But what of that, she would like to know? It was the surest sign of good luck to them, although it was the best service. Only for that, her Crad would have gone away for ever, and never known how she loved him. Yes, with all her heart, every single atom of it, every delicious one, if he must know, and she would keep it for him for ever, and be thinking of him always. Let him recollect that, poor darling, and think of his troubles no more. Then he told her how Uncle John had behaved, how nobly, how magnanimously, and had given every bit of money he possessed in the world, for Cradock to start in life with. John Rosedew's only child began to cry again at hearing it, and put her little hand into her pocket in the simplest way imaginable. "Yes, you will, dear. No, I won't," went on for several minutes, till Amy nestled quite into his bosom, and put her sweet lips to his ear. "If you don't, I will never believe that you love me truly. I am your little wife, you know, and all that I have is yours." The marriage portion in debate was no more than 5 and 6pence, for Amy could never keep money long. So Cradock accepted the sweet little purse, only he must have a bit of her hair in it. She pulled out her little sewing–case, which she always took to the day–school, and the small bright scissors flashed in the moonlight, and they made a great fuss over them. 2 great snips were heard, I know, for exchange, after all, is no robbery. Then hand in hand they went together to see poor Clayton's grave, and Cradock started as they approached, for something black was moving there. "Little dear," said Amy, as the doggy looked mournfully up at them, "she would starve if it were not for me. And I could not coax her to eat a morsel until I said, 'Clayton, poor Clayton,' and then she licked my hand, and whined, and took a bit to please me. She has had a very nice tea to–night. I told you I broke the saucer, but that was all my own clumsiness." "And what has she got there? Oh God, I can't stand it. It is too melancholy." Black Wena, when it was dark that evening, and Clayton must have done dinner, had stolen away to his dressing–room, and fetched, as she had been taught to do, his smoking–jacket and slippers. It took her a long time to carry the jacket, for fear it should be wet for him. Then she came with a very important air, and put them down upon his grave, and wagged her tail for approval. She was lying there now, and wondering how much longer till he would be ready. Cradock sobbed hysterically, and Amy led him softly away to the place where his travelling–bag was. "Now, wait here one moment, my poor dear, and I will bring you your future companion." Presently Amy came back, with Wena following the coat and the slippers. "Darling Cradock, take her with you. She is so true and faithful. She will die if she is left here. And she will be such a comfort to you. Take her, Cradock, for my sake." The last entreaty settled it. Cradock took the coat and slippers, and carried Wena a little way, while she looked back wistfully at the churchyard, and Amy coaxed and patted her. They agreed on the road that Amy Rosedew should call upon Miss Garnet to restore the bracelet, and should mark how she received it. For Amy had now a strong suspicion, especially after what Cradock had seen, which now became intelligible, that Pearl knew more of poor Clayton's death than had been confessed to any one. "My own Cradock, only think," said Amy, "I have felt the strongest conviction throughout that you had nothing to do with it." "Sweetest one," he replied, with a desperate longing to clasp her, but for Wena and the carpet–bag, "that is only because you love me. Never say it again, dear. Suspense, or even doubt about it, would kill me like a slow poison." Amy shuddered at his tone, and thought how different men were, for a woman would live on the hope of it. But she remembered those words when the question arose, and rejoiced that he knew not the whole of it. And now, with the great drops in her eyes, she stood at her father's gate, to say good–bye to her love. She would not let him know that she cried, but Wena was welcome to know it, and Wena licked some tears off, and then quite felt for Amy. "Good–bye, my own, my only," said Cradock, for the 20th time. Even the latch of the gate was trembling. "God loves us, after all, Amy; or, at any rate, he loves you." "And you, and you. Oh, Cradock, if he loves one, he must love both of us." "I believe he does," said Cradock; "since I have seen you, I am sure of it. Now I care not for the world, except my world in you." "Dearest darling, life of my life, promise me not to fret again." "Fret indeed, with you to love me. Give me just one more." Cradock, with a braver heart than he ever thought to own again, and yet with a hole and string in it, for, after all, he did not own it, being begged away at last by the one who then went down on her knees, only to beg him back again. That hapless, yet most blessed fellow strode away as hard as he could, for fear of running back again. And the dusky trees closed around him, and he knew and loved every one of them. Then the latch of the gate for the last time clicked, when he was out of sight, and the laurustinus by the pier, beginning to bud for the winter, glistened in the moonlight with a silent storm of tears. End of Chapter 28. End of Cradock Nowell, A Tale of the New Forest, Vol. 1, by Richard Doddridge Blackmore. Read by Lynn Thompson in the Willamette Valley.